Okay. Welcome back to Lupin the Third Anime Review, episode number 4. This I'm discussing 6 episodes from Lupin the Third, Part 1, episodes 7 to 12. 7 is the return of Goemon. Now, I should point something out though about this. And I thought this was kind of weird for some reason. Now, in this episode, okay, so basically, in terms of these episodes. Now, the first episode mostly is for Goemon. First time is episode 5. And the reason why he's here is because he's tracking scrolls that are originally stolen by Lupin's father, Lupin II. Who, for some reason, is wearing the same exact outfit as his father, the original Lupin. Yes. Now, in the case of Lupin, the current Lupin, he doesn't dress that way. Nope, he doesn't. Despite the fact he's got a very similar face to his father, he does not dress that way. He dressed more than modern, calling out these weird outfits. So he is not one Jigen involved. Vegeta Mine is there, of course. This guy is wearing a wig, and of course Lupin knows obviously it's Vegeta because he knows her very well. And basically, and it turns out the guy who actually has the scrolls actually comes from somebody else, because he wanted to beat the original Lupin. Now, here's the thing about the series. About this particular series. The previous Lupin II, Lupin's father, never revealed what happened to him. He just shown here in flashback, fights the commander in a flashback, and that's it. That's all you see of the previous Lupin. He mentioned, oh yeah, you fought basically Lupin II. Lupin is like, okay, so you fought my father. Yeah, he does not mention refer to him as his father. Despite the fact he clearly is. Not really sure exactly why in the world that is. That's just the way it is for some strange reason. I have no idea why. So he ends up fighting various people throughout this episode, and of course, then eventually he fights Goemon again. Do some explode. He thinks he's just going to actually explodes, and he finds the real scrolls, and then of course Goemon allows him to keep the real scrolls, and of course they end their little feud by having it where. Goemon slices Lupin's car in half while Lupin drives across a log. Yes, seriously. And they chase her around, and of course they just fight for a bit, and of course they laugh it off, and he kind of becomes a member of the gang. Like Goemon himself, he's actually seen episodes 7 and 8 and 9. But as for 10 to 12, he is completely absent. Do not know the reason for it, he just is simply not there. Episode 8 is simply put Lupin having his first ever thing he wants to steal with a plan. What? Now, basically, you watch this episode 8, you're like, wow, this sounds very similar to one of the Magic Kaido stuff. Because, of course, the creator of the series probably ripped this off from that. So, basically, the plan is simple. Steal a deck of cards that are referred to as the Napoleon cards. According to the show, these cards belonged to Napoleon Bonaparte, where he lost them when he was conquering Russia, and this apparently caused him to basically lose his empire. In reality, it was something else. I highly doubt it was due to deck of cards, maybe it's that for the show. And so they steal it from a sleazeball who actually is a friend of a local commissioner. Like, this guy's clearly a crime boss, and yet he's friends with the commissioner. Is it possible the commissioner may be corrupt? I don't know. As for who the commissioner is, never revealed in the episode, aside from the fact he's the inspector's boss. Not much is known about him, aside from the fact he's the inspector's boss, and he's the guy's best friend. Yep. Apparently they known each other for 20 years. So, and of course they try to catch Lupin, but he eventually gets away with the cards, and the cards just lead them on his own. Yes. Because he thanks him for basically freeing him from him, and that's the last of the cards. As for the guy himself, he's never seen again in the episodes. Episode 9. Yeah, this one is a bit unique. 9 is simply a character developed from Vegeta Mine. Now, Goemon is in the beginning of this episode that he leaves because he want to do anything with a woman. And he leaves. He is not seen again the rest of the episode, and he is not seen for the next 3 episodes. So I'll just point out that episode 10 is basically the last episode that aired in 1971. So it's basically that we have this hitman hired to go after Lupin because he told plans. And this hitman, his name is Poon. And apparently he had past with Fujiko Mine. What was his past? They were partners and lovers. And of course, basically that, well, Fujiko's injured. Then of course Poon just takes her. Despite the fact she really operated on, get the bullet out. Lupin basically wants to bring the surgical stuff to him. He's like, no, stay there. Then he proceeds to cut a bunch of bamboo and then shoot a bunch of bamboo sticks, basically. And the last one, just get in there. And of course, he takes him. And then eventually, Fujiko wakes up. That's why she's injured. And then she shoots Poon. And then, of course, basically, like, well, he dies. By the way, I think that's the last you see of him. Because he apparently dies. Then Fujiko goes out dancing with Lupin. And of course, look like Lupin's going to get some more action with her in the bedroom. But nope, ties up. And of course, she's doing some more for him. And, well, that's episode 9 for you. Episode 10, along with episode 12, is episodes set in, like, some snow countries. So, basically, in the case of 10, it's all about stealing counterfeit money. And they're after the Silver Fox, who is an old lady who is referred to as the Queen of Counterfeiting, and apparently she does not trust her nephew, her own nephew, to continue the business. Why, you might ask? Never explained. And she keeps the most skilled person who actually can make counterfeit money inside of a clock tower, that's the clock thing that's inside of a freaking mountain. Yes. What's the reason for this? Don't know. Apparently they retired and they're collecting clocks now. Why in the world are they collecting clocks? Don't know. And apparently she's the queen of her own country. Supposedly, anyways. Yeah, nothing much is known about it. By the way, Baron Ukraine, that's his name. That is basically the Silver Fox's nephew. Now Lupin wants to get the money from me. He goes like, nah, not really. I'm retired. Like, you can basically just take whatever's there and go. It's like he just doesn't want anything to do with this at all. Nope. Now, as for the reason why he retired, well, from his perspective, he was getting old. In the case of why in the world this old lady cannot pass the business down to her nephew, he says, oh, you can't hound the counterfeit business. Really? How? Can you explain that? I mean, that's one of the baffling things about episode 10. Nothing is really explained. It's like, we're left questioning, like, what the heck just happened this episode? Yes. Oh, and by the way, the episode does end with the Silver Fox getting shot, died. Oh, we have this really cool sequence with Lupin climbing up the mountain and just basically waiting on the clock hand to go through this 10, which apparently is where the guy is. Fujiko was kind of in the episode, and then, of course, after the Silver Fox dies, and he proceeds to churn this little device, this thing with a key, and the place is destroyed. And they get nothing out of it. You finish watching the episode like, what was the point of this episode? Yes, what was the point of episode 10? Yes, episode 11. This actually is the first episode of the series not even featured Fujiko Mine. There's a woman who looks like Fujiko Mine, but according to Lupin, and this definitely is true, but look at her, this is not Fujiko Mine, just some blonde woman named Lisa. This actually is the second blonde woman pop up in the series. Last one popped up in episode 3. Yep, the whole thing this episode is that somebody's blowing up bridges and blaming Lupin. Now, this one does get a lot of explanation. It's supportive of this episode, where the guy blowing his bridge just wants basically Lupin to get the hands on the money, which apparently is the only armored truck in the whole city for some reason. Also, apparently the city kind of reminds me of Venice, kind of in a way, but also some Italians. You could say this episode set in Italy. Of course, the inspector is back in this episode. Yeah, he's back. Now, the weird thing is the inspector does not really appear very much in these episodes. Like, in the case of these 12 of these 6 episodes, he only appears in 2. Yes, 2. The inspector, the guy who constantly hounds Lupin, basically try to arrest him. And he appears in 2 episodes. Yep. So he gets blamed for it, and of course he questions Lupin. Lupin, what the heck is going on? Because not even because it's kind of like written weird. It's like, oh, he basically believes Lupin blew up bridges, despite the fact Lupin's a thief. He's not exactly a terrorist. So why the heck is he written two different ways? I have no idea. It's by far one of the most baffling things related to this episode. It's like the first half is like, oh yeah, he basically runs captures Lupin for blood bridges, and you get to the second half, meets with Lupin, is like, what are you talking about? Oh, in case you're curious about chapters in the manga where they loosely that from, episode 7, 54, 56, 54 to 56, 8, 61, 63, 9 covers chapter 82. Episode 10 is basically 75. 11 is 11 and 16. 12 is basically 23. Mm-hmm. Yes. So basically, yeah, as for why in the world that this guy decided to kidnap this random woman named Lisa, that part of the episode is never explained why. Maybe it was cut from the original sub, like when they did the maybe that didn't get translated. I'm not really sure what happened here, because it is baffling of why in the world he decided to kidnap her. Why did he figure out Lupin's weakness the fact is women? Possibly yes. And heck, he was basically saw her in half, just to Lupin cooperate with him. And he's like, okay, I'll stick this up for you. We're gonna do it my way. He's like, really? Yeah. If you want, basically blame me for this, let me do my style. He's like, okay, good idea. And of course, does he get the money per se? Well, he gets shot by Lupin toward the end of the episode after Jugen decide. Now, this episode is done really well, and I like the whole. It feels like a bit of a spy episode. It feels a bit like a spy episode ish. Where investigating these explosives, like Lupin investigating stuff, was quite interesting. Yes, I mean it's like the first half is done really well, with the exception of the Inspector, and the second half feels like, oh, let's just have this big armored truck that looks like a freaking tank. Yes, that's what armored trucks look like, tanks like this, where they apparently have this pull down thing. Maybe it's a foreign country. They probably just transform a tank into an armored truck. Don't know why. So they apparently take it by flipping it over and landing on a boat. Now, this thing probably weighs about 20 tons, and that's a wooden boat. This thing will cause it to frickin' sink. As for what happened to the two people inside the cabin, well, they're tied up and never seen again. Yeah. It's almost like you have two different plots going on in this episode with this thing, yes. Though it's a well-made, it's basically well-written, except there's a minor plot hole for this one. Unlike in the case of 10, where I feel like there was way too many plot holes, nothing really much to explain. This one we kind of explain stuff going on here. And, oh yeah, by the way, the whole point of exploding bridges so he can go through the ghost town. That's the whole reason for that. As why he wanted the money, because he wanted to retire. Yep. And apparently he's a serial bomber. Yep. As for the final episode, who has the last laugh? This one does feature Fujiko Mine, and it's another one set in the snow. Also, I should point out that episode 11 was the first one to air in 1972. So this one is basically like a guy who basically has a village elder, which is, by the way, revealed at the end of the episode. His village is actually deserted. I'll get to more of that. So he held him hostage because he's tripling the money for these two statues. Why in the world he wants those two statues? Don't know. And then we see randomly, we see a hole drilled with the wall, and then one of the statues is taken, and of course she runs off, and then she randomly runs to Lupin. Yes, it feels completely random, he just entered her cave for some reason, eating her food, and of course he wanted to get jiggy with her, and gets burning his face partially burned, he gets filled up with a bleeder. Yes. Now, as for why in the world she wanted this stuff, I have no idea. Because she's a thief. So, they kind of agreed to work together. By the way, Gormon, it's never mentioned where the heck he is this episode. Nope, he just not even mentioned. Like, so far in 12 episodes, the guy has appeared in four episodes. 5, 7, 8, and 9. And that's it. And there was no mention of the Inspector, mind you. Yes, the Inspector did appear in episode 1. He appeared in episode 3. I think so far in 12 episodes, he's only appeared in, I said, it was 1 and 3, I know that for sure. Actually, it's like 1, 4. I'd say 6. 8. And 11. So, not many episodes for the Inspector constantly hounds Lupin, which it could be the fault of the animators for doing that. I'm not really sure. So basically, Lupin tries to get to all of his money that he has with him and get off his clothes, but he gets the clothes back anyways. And so they kind of basically kind of get the statues, but not really. And of course, the guy kills himself along with apparently the statues. Though he doesn't get the money per se, the old man gets the money, gets away with it. Now, also, his village is destroyed. Apparently, he doesn't care. And it's mentioned the village is deserted. As for why it's deserted, never explained. It's like, oh, we want to sell them to make a profit because they're poor. And of course, he swaps the maps on Fujiko. Fujiko gets nothing this episode, and the old man gets the maps to treasure. Get a chance to live his retirement. Yes, so it's an okay episode per se. It's just that with this one, I kind of felt as though that with this one, the only plot hole of this whole episode is why the heck is this village deserted? And by the way, he is not bothered by the fact that his whole village was destroyed by Lupin. Yeah, apparently he's not bothered by it at all for some reason. And I'm thinking that's kind of weird. I mean, basically he acts almost like people think he could be Lupin, but nope. He just a random old man appears in this episode. Yeah. But an okay episode nonetheless. I would say probably the best written episode is probably episode number 11. Like, I like the whole Bridges stuff. It's just that basically with that one, it's got good first half writing, and the second episode feels a bit jarring to say the least. Yep. So yeah, that's it, particular review. I'm just gonna go ahead and watch episode 13 next. Watch the next 4 episodes, and then do hopefully a review. Okay, next video. Bye.